If someone were to ask a group of people who their favorite Avatar character is, you'd get plenty of different answers. Aang, Zuko, maybe Katara. You definitely hear a lot of Sokkas, maybe even a Suki or two. One name that'll probably consistently pop up though is Iroh. Everybody loves Iroh. Maybe a little too much. And that's not to say it's bad to love Iroh. Iroh was my favorite character in the show. But I was talking to one of my friends about Avatar the other day, and it made me realize just how many people kinda got Iroh wrong. She made a comment about how nobody in the Fire Nation was always a good person besides Iroh, and I was like, wait, hold on. Iroh was always what? Ignoring how wrong the overall statement is, Iroh himself isn't meant to be this pillar of good and this saint that he sometimes gets portrayed as in the Avatar fanbase. Yeah, he's a good person now, but he wasn't always, and that's kind of the entire point. Other Avatar fans always pointed out over the years, I always see posts saying stuff like, oh, Iroh was evil most of his life, we underrate how evil he is, and that's true. But just like people are wrong for thinking Iroh is a saint, I do think people are also wrong for saying Iroh is straight up evil because of his past actions. This is just how I interpreted it, so if anybody disagrees, feel free to let me know. But to me, Iroh was the embodiment of the Fire Nation's guilt. He isn't supposed to be seen as perfect. Sometimes when people talk about him, they act like he's this all good, all-knowing person when he took part in and was an active participant in the Fire Nation's colonization. He was keying and laughing it up while writing to his family about burning down Ba Sing Se. He was objectively horrible. Iroh's character was about choosing peace over violence, love over hate, and prioritizing your loved ones over power. Iroh's turning point, which we all know was his son dying, could have easily pushed him further down the path of evil. How many times have we seen stories where a guy loses a loved one and he's like, "Mwahaha, I'll just have revenge, hee hee," as if he wasn't the one that started the whole conflict in the first place. Iroh recognized that it wasn't the people of Ba Sing Se's fault for defending themselves, it was the Fire Nation's fault for attacking in the first place. Iroh was supposed to show us that it's possible to have a past and still become a good person. You just have to look inwards and face harsh truths about yourself and your mindset. That's why his entire character arc takes place before the show. By the time he's introduced, he's already become the good elderly man we know him as. We always saw him as just a kind old guy until we found out what he did in the past. It's an example of how your bad past actions don't have to define you and drag you down wherever you go. You can completely reinvent yourself as long as you're willing to take that step. He was an example of what Zuko could have become and what he did become. Iroh had faith in Zuko, and it was that faith that led to Zuko's turning point of the show. Iroh always detected the capacity to change in Zuko, so despite the fact that he was often a whiny, angst, emo little shit, he knew there was at least something in there, and Zuko demonstrated it a few different times. That was the difference between him and Azula, who Iroh said needed to be put down because he didn't detect any of it in there. There's so many examples of it throughout the show. The first episode of season 2, Azula's crew warned her of the tides that could put them all in danger, and she didn't give a fuck, actually threatening his life instead of heeding his warning. Back in season 1, Zuko chose not to chase the Avatar to prioritize the safety of him and his crew during a storm. There was also the time Zuko chose not to rob a man because he was with his pregnant wife. Word of my mother, Azula would have fed that lady an uppercut and probably curb stomped her stomach for good measure too. There was that time in season 1 in like episode 7 or something where Zuko says he'll leave in half an hour without Iroh if he doesn't hurry up, but hours later, presumably because it's after sundown by the time the scene pops up, he hadn't left without him at all and he was still waiting. Iroh's main goal was teaching Zuko what he wishes he knew when he was much younger. Things would have been way different if he'd matured and changed his worldview before his son died. Guilt, regret, change, and prevention. The guilt from his actions as Fire Nation General and the regret over how his actions led to his son's death, then changing as a person and preventing a repeat of the cycle happening with Zuko, who was the only one Iroh had left that he had any sliver of hope left in. One of the interesting things I personally believe about Iroh is that I kind of think he's still somewhat mad at himself because even his transition into a good person was selfish. I kind of think he hates the fact that it took him being affected by the Fire Nation's violence to start caring, and despite the fact that he's glad he grew as a person, there's still a part of him that wonders, would I have ever changed if I wasn't impacted, and does that mean I'm still a selfish person? It's just a thought. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Our entire lives are shaped by our actions. We learn from our mistakes. We grow. If it took a different perspective to realize that you were a shitty human, then that's okay. I would just be thankful that I got the opportunity to see that different perspective because many people like Azula and Ozai did it. As for Iroh being evil, I feel like one of the main themes surrounding Zuko's character arc was indoctrination. We saw how he was raised and how other Fire Nation children are raised. Iroh breaking free from the Fire Nation's conditioning that he was raised on as one of the most powerful people in the nation is more of an indication that he wasn't inherently evil despite what his past actions say. We know Iroh did a lot of horrible things. Ozai being so angry that he changed is probably a major indication of how much work Iroh was putting in back then, but he was in the field for real. I would be mad if I lost my best shooter too. But the more you emphasize Iroh's evil actions, the more you just drive in the entire point further. That's just how I feel about the discourse though. I feel like every other week I see a new argument about if Iroh was a good person, and people kind of fail to realize that him not being a good person and choosing to become a good person is why he is a good person.